Okay, so we've got an amendment and a motion on the board. Who's missing? No, we're all here. Yep, that's good.
Is this the last thing we do?
No, there's some administrative little rats and mice to tidy up afterwards.
Okay.
But this is the big vote. This is yeah.
Because we're under a legislative framework of getting this thing done, and it's got to be done in certain things. Yeah, that's right.
Yep. So once you've voted on the rates, you will have a draft budget, and then it's, as Mayor Andrew says, some rats and mice.
Okay, so we'll go straight to.
Funny way to talk about your staff, isn't it?
We'll go straight to debate.
Oh, can I see?
Yes.
Sorry, can I see the motion? Oh, that's the bottom. The motion to the sorry, I've got a headache in my eyes, so it's a bit bung. Yeah. It's the same, just the figures have changed here. Okay. Cool.
Okay, so I want strong, sound, sustainable books for the next 10 years and a further 30 years into the future for Hamilton. I've consistently said that we need to balance our budget. I've consistently said that I don't want to see our future mortgaged for future generations. And I've consistently said that I don't want to see a future mayor or a future council having to come into a situation where the books aren't balanced. So today this is about, after 3 or 4 long marathon days, this is about putting this out to the community for consultation so that the community can understand the true costs to run our city and the impact and consequences of not balancing our budget. So all along, the end game here was to get this out in front of the public so that we can get feedback from the public, and I welcome that. So to repeat where I started, what I want for Hamilton is strong, sound and sustainable books going forward from here. Councillor Dave.
Thanks. I agree with everything that the Mayor's just said. But,
That's my line.
but unlike Gary, I'm not going to totally vote the opposite direction, only partially. No, look, I think the only issue here is the tactics of how you get through the hurdle that's been placed in front of us because we haven't been able to balance the books and the need to balance them as quickly as possible. And one of the things, that the point that Andrew has made in the recent past that's told on me is that this council should be responsible for fixing the situation. And I agree with that, but at the same time, a very large rates increase of 16% in one hit is an extreme situation for many of our ratepayers to handle. I think that the load should be spread, but not so far that it goes into the life of the next council, which A, hands them a burden that they didn't create, not that we created necessarily the burden in front of us now. We did a little bit, but not all of it. I think that it's better to solve the situation ourselves and not put at risk the final leg or final legs of the burden. But I think that 16.0% or 15.5% as it was before is too much in one hit. Let us spread it over 2 years with the added possibility, and I want to give Councillor Rob some credit for re-raising the issue of fuel tax and pushing it again so that we were required to pay more attention to it. We've done that now, and there is a distinct possibility, only that it could go through, not the sort of possibility that says that it's a guarantee and we're going to be able to come down to 3.8 in year 2, but there's a possibility that it would be available and applicable to year 2. So the second 9.5 has a chance of being reduced further, but that is the worst possible scenario, the worst case. We'd stay with the 9.5 that we'd be voting for with the amendment. Best case, we achieve the fuel tax and it is able to pay for our transport expenditure, and we're able to reduce the rates further. And that's what the amendment says, that it's that any savings achieved through the fuel tax are applicable to rates from year 2 onwards. Yeah, other than that, that's fine for me. Thanks.
Councillor Jones.
Welcome to life as a councillor, James Casson. Jeez. You know, like from when we, there's 5 of us here new to council when we, and I've said it before, where we, when we campaigned, we were told the books were in good stead in the city, and we found out they're not. So it was a little bit of a sideswipe for us. I'm going to be voting for the amendment because, like Dave, I think it is probably slightly more palatable in 2 reasonable side chunks instead of one humongous lump, and I think the ratepayer would look at it that way as well. It's not locked and loaded as yet. I wanted to see go out to public consultation because I think there's a few items we have voted in that will be hopefully removed when it comes back from consultation, public consultation. And when the public consult on this and they send in their, it'd be a huge number of submissions, I think, on this, just because of the number we're looking at, 16%. I'm hoping that every one of the councillors sitting around this table will listen to those ratepayers. And if they overwhelmingly do not want something to go ahead, I'm hoping we will listen to them and vote that out, because that's what public consultation is for, to actually listen to the public. And if we don't do that, then what's the use of having it? So, like I said, I'm voting for the amendment on here, Councillor McPherson's and Pascoe's amendment, because it is slightly better at 2 chunks. But you know, I'm pretty disappointed we've actually got to this point where the rates increase is 16%.
Councillor Robb.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'll be supporting the amendment, the 2-stepped approach. I understand, Mayor Andrew, the purpose of your motion. I think the 2-stepped approach is fairer on ratepayers, given, in addition to this, they've got the accelerated change to capital value 6 years ahead of, 6 years earlier than previously promised. It also provides an opportunity to phase in the regional fuel tax if we are successful in having this new stream of income. I think it will be really, really important in the consultation document to make it very clear that the regional fuel tax will be an adjustment to rates rather than a brand new income stream. And I think that will put the size of the 2-year increase of 19%, that will make that a lot more palatable. Thank you.
Councillor Paula.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Well, I'm going to repeat some of what other people have said. This has come as a huge surprise to the general public, especially coupled with the immediate transition to capital value. It compounds the effect on people. Because let's remember that no matter whether we, and I'm voting for the amendment, but whether we vote for the amendment or the motion, many people will not get that average rates increase. Many people will get more, much more. I believe we must give our citizens a chance to adapt financially. Yes, we know that our rates are lower than some other centres, and we must do something about this if we want to fund some of our community assets. But this did not happen overnight, and I will argue that some small incremental increases of rates over the last few years may have eased this. I'm not happy with some of the very big and very expensive new projects that have come to the table and pushed out other existing ideas that the public were already aware of. Not that those big projects don't have some nice ideas within them, they do, and I would have liked to have been able to look at them in part and figure out what we could do and what we couldn't do, but we just got the whole suite, bang, are you for or against Central City Park or not? There again, the public are surprised because they're saying, where did these projects come from? We just didn't take them on the journey, I don't think. And I just want to make one other point, is that a regional fuel tax will still hit people in their pocket. And, you know, so it's just a transfer of how things are paid for. And we don't know how successful we will be. We're taking a punt, happy to see how it goes, but I'm sure that the public will have views. So I'm asking the public to look carefully at a number of things, the priorities, especially some of the big ticket items, and they must also look carefully at the unfunded projects. Because some of those unfunded projects are the sort of things that we've been talking about, or this council prior to me being here, have been talking about with the public about for some time. These are things like the River Plan, the Frankton Plan, the Hamilton East Plan, the Zoo Plan. I could go on. There are lots of things that we haven't even touched in conversation in this meeting. But we're out of money and we're out of time. Let's take it to the public and, you know, look, there is power in submissions. I hope people will submit.
Councillor Siggy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Well, it's like Councillor Kesson said, being new and has been very, very challenging. But also, it's challenging to balance the books with the historical debt, the growth, the infrastructure, the community wishes, and the visionary projects without raising the rates. And I'm just looking forward to the public consultation, and I do hope many people will have a say, because nothing is in concrete. They have a say, and we will listen. And so that's why I support the amendment. Well, you know, the fuel tax is a double-edged sword because, yes, we have to pay, some of us pay more fuel. On the other hand, it's amazing that there has been no uproar, that the tax has actually gone up, the fuel has actually gone up quite a lot in the last few weeks and nobody seemed to notice. So if it goes up another few cents, I don't know whether people will notice because, you know, yeah, I'm looking forward to the public consultation, and I will, over the Christmas and New Year's time, I hope I can talk to a lot of people, and hopefully they will challenge me as well. So, yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Andrew. First, I want to congratulate Andrew on his transparency and his desire to tidy up the books, and he's happy to take, well, he has, whether he's happy to take it or not, he has taken on the responsibility of sorting this thing out without passing it on to the next regime. So that's a great plaudits to Andrew. I'm glad we're over this part of the process. I'm glad we're sending our 10-year plan out to our ratepayers. I'm really disappointed that we're balancing our budget on the backs of our ratepayers. And it is sad, and I've said this a million times, so I'll just say 1,000,001. I am disappointed that we went down the track of trying to find revenue as the only way to balance our books, rather than accepting that there are some services we can cut, some services that are not delivering a benefit commensurate with the cost, some services we're delivering which are simply obsolete and no longer required, or some services that we're delivering that other people can do a better job of. I'm very much looking forward to hearing the response of the community. It'll be interesting, and I'm looking forward to the rest of this process. So thank you.
Deputy Mayor Martin.
Thank you. The role of the Deputy Mayor is obviously to ensure, in my view, that the Mayor's proposals are able to democratically come to this Council for democratic consideration, and then my vote obviously is my own. I will be supporting the McPherson-Pascoe amendment. I was in the supermarket the other day, tracksuit, buying a cup of tea bags and coffee, and a guy came up to me and said, "What on earth are you guys doing with Garden Place?" So I made a deal with him. I said, "Look, I'll listen to you and have a chat here between my groceries and my trolley, subject to you coming and making a submission." Because I said, "You know what, sir? I want to spend days and days and days in this chamber respectfully listening to the submissions, respectfully engaging with our public." The recent Garden Place vote was not lost on me. And I would say there'll be a number of proposals. If people want the river plan to survive, a la the central part, the central idea, the theatre, the wonderful, in my view, community centre in the northeast, Garden Place, if you want stuff to survive, you come here for two reasons. One, of course, you're concerned about the rates increase and your ability to pay. I get that, listen to with respect. But all projects are still up there for consultation. So if you are passionate for a particular project, come and let us hear your views. Everything is on the table, and I do believe this is a genuine consultation process where all of this council will very, very closely listen to people's views. The fuel tax is an interesting one, and one of the reasons I like the fuel tax is it is actually, ironically, a user pay tax to a degree, because, in other words, if you drive the car and your family, you use the roads, you use the infrastructure, so you're actually paying via your fuel tax for what you use, as against an elderly ratepayer who may be immobile now having to pay. What I love about it also is it means my good friends from Tamahiri will pay, because that's the way in which the visitors to the city can also make a contribution, and I like that. That really appeals to me when they bring their larders in and their Hummers and whatever from Tamahiri. They go to our service stations, so I'm really keen about that. And I would also say to the Chief Executive, we have given you an exercise beyond the fuel tax to review how we do local government. And in year 2, we, for our 2019-2020 annual plan, we are still going to be burning the midnight oil, because my objective is to keep attacking that 9.5 in the second year, and hopefully with a combination of fuel tax and efficiencies, we get that down even further. And I think we've got to commit ourselves to that as well. We've got to do everything we can still to try and reduce that burden and to reduce that impact. And it's not lost on me, we are making a very, very fundamental change in our rating system as well in one hit. I also will compliment, I don't always agree with the Mayor, but there's one thing you can't disagree, if there's someone that's got courage, very unusual for a politician to have the ability to have some courage and say he's sorry and to say what he thinks. He's an unusual politician. Most of them don't say sorry, and many of them don't have too much courage. So I compliment you on the way in which you've led this exercise.
Councillor Jeff.
Thanks, Mayor Andrew. Look, I'm disappointed. I don't think we've tried hard enough, and I completely include myself in that. I don't think I've done a good enough job there, and I think I made some mistakes in the earlier days. I've tried strenuously today to save some dollars. I voted against a few things which I really were close to my heart, and haven't achieved the result. I've pledged to ratepayers that I would do my best to try and keep the rates for next year, the figure that we're putting out for public consultation, to 6 or 7%, because that's the feedback that I've consistently got was at the upper end, and I do feel that 9.5 is unacceptable. 16% is just a whole other word altogether. But I acknowledge this is my first long-term plan process, and it's a gruelling thing. I acknowledge the incredible work that staff put in over a long period of time. And but what I would say is that I'm quite happy to clear my diary on Friday, quite happy to clear my diary Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday to keep going, to get a result that I'm happier with, if there was a will. Because I'm not happy with what we've done. That's about it, really.
Councillor Leo.
Yeah, I'm a bit like Jeff, I'm afraid. Look, I fully realise that we have to have sufficient money coming in from rates to finance the day-to-day running of this city. There have been a number of projects in the proposed budget that I am unable to support, and I've been fairly consistent in not supporting quite a number of them. I would go so far as to say that some of the projects I think are just a shopping list. The proposal of a 16% rate increase, this is going to be a huge shock to our community, and I think they've got a fair idea that it's coming. Councils pay for services through property tax, which is our rates. We sell the odd entry to the pools. We charge a few regulatory fees. Believe it or not, we still issue a few parking infringement notices around the town, and the interest earned on some of our investments. I think what we must be as councillors is financially, what I'd say, financially responsible. I believe that is why the people of Hamilton actually put us in these seats here, because they saw in the people that they elected a little bit of courage, which I think is necessary, because you do have to make the hard decisions at times. And I think what they're going to be is a very disappointed community out there. But however, they've got their opportunity to come back in, and as Martin Gallagher has said, he'll be quite happy to listen to all these submissions which are coming in. So at the present time, I'm going to vote against the amendment and against the motion.
Councillor Angela.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew. Look, I know we're not quite there yet, but I did want to take a couple of seconds just to thank staff for getting us this far, and that includes the great modelling that we have had, and everybody staying really late, and also to Leanne and her team as well for the incredible hours that I know that everybody has put in. Look, this budget that has been led by the Mayor has been built on his priority of growth, and he is exercising his democratic right as Mayor of Hamilton, and I respect that. Over the last 5 days, we've all participated in that democratic process, and we've used our votes to influence, sway and move decisions, either for or against the particular proposals that have come before us. I've used my democratic vote during that debate to also influence the outcome. However, I do remain consistent and fundamentally opposed to the suite of priorities that have presented themselves to build this budget. And for me, that started in March with the financial strategy, and I remain consistent on that. The Mayor's priority in this budget is not mine, and I will be exercising my democratic right to oppose that. The priority for me in this budget is people. The priority for me is Hamilton City and our community. I've heard from some around this table over the last 5 days of this budget, during this budget exercise, that there's no money. But that's been said often when the decisions for things that they have supported have come up, have gone through discussion, and then other priorities that are not theirs have come up for discussion. There's no money conveniently espoused after they've spent public money on the things that they want to see in the budget. But that is the democratic process, and I respect that. But you don't get to conveniently pick and choose when you decide when there's money and when there isn't. It was a choice, and it has been a choice, to build this budget. The choice to put $3.9 million in Garden Place, the choice to spend a $30 million total end cost of a buy and bowl option to build a new Central City Park. Those choices reflect the majority of priorities for the members around this table, and I respect that process. As well as the difference of priorities in this budget, it's actually the effects of the priorities of this budget. And whether you smooth the financial impact over 2 years or not, the decisions to form this budget are still there. And that leads me to the impact on our people. A lady called Chrissy Atkinson phoned me a couple of weeks ago, and she was concerned about any substantial rates increase. She said to me, "Angela, I've got an idea." And I said, "What's that, Chrissy?" And she said, she's an older retired resident, she said her and her friends would forego their rates rebate for 1 year from us if that would get the rates down. I said to Chrissy, that's a really wonderful thing to offer, but it wouldn't have any impact. That is a true story. So while we might think that smoothing the rates increase over a couple of years is the right thing to do, it's not the right thing to do for Chrissy. And fundamentally, it is the priorities in this budget that have been built into it since March that I'm opposed to.
Councillor Mark.
Thank you, and I echo Angela's gratitude to staff and for being as supportive as you've been over these hours. This is coming from the perspective of a new councillor. Essentially, look, the guts of it to me has been the Mayor's put out a proposed budget to present to public, and we've debated it long and hard for a good many hours. Now, there's been the obvious talking points. Firstly, the massive rates hike. The rationale is that previous councils haven't rated highly enough to cover costs, and some have argued have masked that by including developer contributions, DCs, to balance the books, and they've deferred maintenance to such a level that we're now having to pay. It's a perfect storm. Think pools, think theatres. Add to that, new legislative requirements have put a massive strain on the organisation, and they're costing an arm and a leg. Think the Kaikoura earthquakes, meaning that suddenly our civic facilities need very expensive upgrades because we are deemed a higher risk. Add to that growth that might have been put on the back burner due to the GFC, and now we're stonking ahead outwards and our roading and water infrastructures are groaning, and that's really expensive. That's a perfect storm. So for many reasons, there's a financial hole. However, we are still charged with making this the greatest place to live. So my job, I think, has been to make decisions that keep people's rates down and the enjoyment of the city up. Pure and simple, really. It's just not easy. There's been some really interesting decisions made. Some I regret. I regret voting for the immediate transition to capital value. Some I am still on the fence with, and I'm really looking forward to public consultation. The Central City Park is one. There's some I'm really proud of, and I think we've made some fantastic decisions here too. And we should take a big bow because we have made some great decisions based on some work that's been done really well in the past. And I use the rubbish and recycling decision, the pooches in the park decision, the playground solution. I think we've done some great work there and I'm really excited. I'm very, very proud of those. So again, there's been a lot of hysteria about this budget. But please now, I say to the people of Hamilton, play your part. We're in this together and we need your voices. Please seek to understand, then be understood. Understand it first before you make great, big statements. Please don't attack us personally. Keep letting us know what's important to us. Go for it with the public submission because it's up to you now. This is it. I'll be supporting the amendment because it is a little bit smoother. I'm exactly like Jeff, exactly like Leo. I'm disappointed we haven't got it down, but we've worked real hard at it and there comes a time where it's over to the public, so go for it.
Point of process,
Yes.
if people were to vote or not to vote for the amendment or the motion.
Hang on, stop. I don't think you should ask that question. If you are, we are right on the verge of the vote. And you need to understand what's going on, and a question like that can lead people, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to accept that question. I'll take my right of reply. So we had 28 days of briefings leading up to the long-term plan. And nobody during that 28 days suggested removing anything, any council services, although you were asked repeatedly if there's anything that you did want to remove. I took on board what you said from those briefings. I want a sound, strong and sustainable set of books for our council and our city going forwards. During this budget process, I've tested you. We put up things, some services to cut, some services to outsource. None of those got any traction, and they would have made a dramatic difference to the books, to the percentage of rates that were being paid. But this council didn't want it in the briefings, and they didn't want it during this 10-year plan. So the budget you've got is the budget that you chose on the way through. And I'm comfortable with where we've landed. We've got a budget that balances our books. We have a budget that maintains our assets that haven't been maintained properly in the past because the money hasn't been there to do that. We've got a budget that provides amenities, which is what you asked for. But above all, we've got a budget that provides for growth and that delivers on decades of promises made around this table. we've got a budget that delivers, because there's a financial stream now to go with the ideas, and that's how you deliver ideas. So we'll go to the vote. So we're voting first on the amendment. So the amendment becomes a substantive motion, so then we're now voting on the motion. Can we clear the board, please? Okay, so now we're voting for the substantive motion. Where's this? Sorry, can we clear the board again? No, I don't want to do it by a show of hands.
How about we count to 3 and push the button at the same time?
Okay,
Close your eyes.
1, 2,
Count
3.
down. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
No, it's cleared anyway.
I've been voting for the last 5 days.
The substantive motion is carried.
Okay, so we'll now hand back to the General Manager. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew.
Page 11. Oh, sorry, page 13.
So, councillors, or elected members, sorry, on page 13, under other recommendations is what we're now looking at. And there are a few changes to what's in the report as a result of the nature of the decisions and conversations over the last 4 or 5 days. But the first motion there is just around. We discussed it when we were talking about the capital program on the first day, and so this is just seeking a delegation for the Chief Executive to treat the capital program using a portfolio approach. And Richard may like to comment further on that.
No, unless there's any questions. Councillor Mallett. Okay. So yes, I've got something to say. So at the moment we manage all our our capital programs on a year-by-year tranche. We don't look to drive efficiencies within that year across aspects of the portfolio. So working between Sean, Chris, Lance, Calvin's team to see whether or not there's better ways of managing portfolio. So what we want to do is take a 3-year view and actually remove the silos and see if there's different ways of cutting it and the benefits we can drive by running the whole capital program across that 3 years, move things back and forth and around and across portfolios.
Maybe give some examples of what might happen.
So
Quite conceptually, I kind of get what you mean, but I think examples might be easier.
it might well mean that we let a contract for I'm trying to think of an example. Sorry?
A bad weather event delays a project, say Seddon Park, for example, working over the winter to get concreting done, plumbing repairs, whatever, can't be done because of the bad weather and time, and then the season starts. So we have to delay until the other side of the cricket season.
Yep, so it means that we give...
So how will this help?
Yep, so it gives us ability, a bit more flexibility. But the other way of doing it is we may well have the ability to look at how we cluster our projects together and go to the market as well. So it might well be there's value in a property, combining a property, H3, or even in Chris's capital program, and go to the market with a bundle of outcomes and actually get one provider to do all of it. Might mean that we can save costs on efficiencies of project managing a whole portfolio of different things, having one project management function across 3 or 4 different projects and so forth. It just means we can approach it a little bit more flexibly. You've raised concerns about deferred capital and striking rates for interest on a program when we don't deliver it. This will give us the greater flexibility of making sure that we take some of the dips and troughs out of our capital program across the period, and we manage that cluster of debt borrowed as well. So it provides in my view, ability to be a little bit more agile and to meet the needs of the community by moving things around, clustering things together, and also looking at different ways we can contract for delivering of those services as well. Greater transparency will come back as well, because we'll take a more in-depth view across the entire portfolio as if it's one portfolio rather than Chris's team looking at it, Lars' team looking at it, and Sean's team looking at it.
So if you're going to insulate buildings, rather than, and I'm just giving an example that I can understand, but I don't know if it's totally appropriate to what you're saying, but say if Chris is going to insulate all his buildings, then Sean might as well insulate his and Lance might as well insulate his at the same time. Is that what you mean?
Stuff like that. It also might mean that if we take a sort of a clustered approach to projects, we might be able to have some cost efficiencies by having one contingency across the entire program rather than building contingencies into individual amounts and so forth as well. So it gives us just, you know, a greater flexibility to cluster things together. You still get your program, but it gives me the delegated authority as chief executive to be a little bit more strategic in terms of when we phase to do them, how we combine them together. Your example of installation is a good one, or it might be there's we're doing one aspect of the Rototuna Town Centre, for example, which has you know, roading, water, library, might have property aspects to it as well, and run it as one project to get the best benefits of doing the whole thing together rather than sending one team out to do that part, one team out to do that part, and so forth. So it's trying to take a bit more sense. It might also mean that we look ahead in our portfolio, and it might say in the next 3 years, if we actually bring some things, move them around, we can let them as one contract rather than actually have them led as 3 individual contracts with 3 lots of overheads, 3 lots of contingency. We can actually start clustering things together. So plan better, execute better, manage better, and report better, in my mind, with savings. And I'm hoping that if we do this, it'll contribute towards my $5 million.
Okay.
However, that's just me being cute.
Do you lose some degree of accountability?
Not at all. You actually you gain it, in my view, because you've got one function looking over everything and making sure that everything's working hand in hand. And so I expect it'll probably mean that the reporting that comes to council will probably tell a better story rather than isolated by type of capital expenditure. It'll be more about what the narrative is for the entire program.
I hope you can make it work.
I hope I can too, but I'm fairly confident because I've got an awesome team.
We've started looking at it already, and I think there is efficiencies to be had there. The other thing could be agility, like if we have an urgent renewal pop up, we can slow down other renewals and do that one if we're looking across the whole portfolio. So look, it's a really good concept.
Which is different than you can do now, than the way you do it now, is that right? So we're talking about a change here, aren't we? So it's
we're talking. It's not a huge change, and I just agree with Richard. It will come with more transparency, not less transparency. So that's what we're working on now, is how we can bring it back to you and demonstrate to you that you're going to get more transparency through this.
Now go ahead.
In day-to-day sense, how's it going to affect us as elected officials? I mean, does this mean that something we've thought would happen at a certain point in time may get moved around, or is that...
You'll effectively sign off a portfolio for You'll sign off like the renewals portfolio for 3 years, telling me as a chief executive that we expect that you'll do this amount of work in that 3-year period, whereas at the moment we've got to keep bringing back and say we're going to do this in year 1, and then we've got to come back and seek approval to do it in year 2. You'll just sign it off for a 3-year bundle, and then I'll work. Effectively what I'm saying to you is I'll deliver a level of service, give me the confidence to actually go off and deliver that level of service in the smartest way possible rather than, you know, taking it individually. Because you signed off the strategy, you've got to endorse the asset management plans, you've signed off the 10-year plan. I've got this quite a detailed but overarching strategy, and it's given me having the confidence in me to then deliver it. And then I'll report back to you and hopefully can deliver some savings, but also can give you greater transparency and hopefully execute our program more effectively is a big outcome from this.
Great. Yeah, I can see that. I can see the advantage in that. But will the reporting back to us be just as frequent?
Yeah. No, cool. You get, and like Chris has supported me, which is great. Thanks, Chris.
Right.
He's got my back. We'll have better reporting, we think, because it'll hopefully tell a more fruitful narrative about our capital program in terms of what we're trying to achieve.
Okay, thank you.
Why do you need approval? Because you're seeking approval from us, aren't you?
Yeah, effectively, because it will have an impact on delegated authority.
Oh, okay, is that what it does?
Yeah,
okay.
So ultimately when we bring this through finally to adopt it as part of the 10-year plan, there'll be a change to the delegated authorities to go with it. So really what you're approving here is that I go away and do some work to prep it back, to come back to council for that discussion. So you're not approving me to go off and execute the program at this stage, because I can't execute the program until you sign off the 10-year plan. But I wanted to flag as early as possible my thinking. In fact, it came out of a discussion with Councillor Rob. You don't have to dobbing you in here, Councillor Rob, but it came out of a discussion with you in terms of how around the asset management plans. Hey, we've signed off the asset management plans for 10 years. We've got 3 years focus. It's been put into the 10-year plan. Why do you have to keep coming back and forth bureaucratically to seek approval to do various parts of it? Why don't you just take a holistic support for the asset management plan approach and drive it that way? And so that's where it spurned that idea from, Councillor Rob. Sorry if you didn't want to take ownership for it, but you're going to have to wear it. You're going to wear it on your shoulders.
I think it should be the way that an organisation of our size runs.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can we put the motion?
Yes.
Okay, so we're putting on page 13, P. Page 13, P.
Of the big one. Of 2 of 3.
So we'll go straight to voting. We're ready? Yeah, I'm moving, Deputy Mayor seconding as usual.
In a supportive style.
Okay, so we're on the board.
The motion is carried unanimously.
Okay, and now we're putting Q, R and S as one motion. So we go straight to the board. Once again. Sure. I'm coming to that after this vote.
No.
Okay.
I can answer that. I can answer that if you like, Mr. Mayor. Yes. So we've got, so after the decision of this meeting, so as staff will go away and regroup and start preparing that, we will bring the content of that. So we've got 2 briefings scheduled in February for council, one on the 7th and one on the 15th. There's also a formal council meeting on the 8th. So what we'd be looking to do is to use both of those briefings and the council meeting, and at the council meeting to get council to approve the content of the document essentially. So we won't have it designed up by then, but we'd be looking for council to approve the draft content.
So the design is effectively the graphical nature of it rather than the content.
Yep, correct.
So there's, yes, there will. Just bear in mind the nature of the consultation document. There's the 10-year plan is, you don't go out and consult, you know this, you don't go out and consult on the full 10-year plan document, right? You go and consult on the consultation document. But the legislation allows us to link various things to different documents. It also allows us to have supportive information as well. So the challenge Sean's got between now and then when he comes back with the content is to work out how we can put all this together. Because even though the decision was today to vote on a rates increase of 9.5% over 2 periods, then go to 3.8%. We're still obliged to reference, for example, the 16% in the document, but that's just going to create confusion. So we need to work on how we can work through that. You know, the preferred option is definitely what's been voted on today, but there's a whole lot of different aspects to it. So we heard what you're saying. Sean will put that up. We've just got to think how innovative we can put that forward without creating a huge cumbersome document. So, heard you, we will do it.
Paula, you're debating and we're actually in the middle of voting and you're... Excuse me, we're in the middle of voting and I've let the first question go, but now you're debating. Can you decide which way you're going to vote? Everyone else has voted. Oh, sorry. The voting's been up for...
The motion is carried unanimously.
Okay, so I want to ask Councillor Bunting, Councillor Dave and Councillor Ange to work with staff on plain English for the document. obviously everyone else will get to see it, but I want you three just to have input on fresh eyes from the staff who can get blinded. I want to particularly thank all members for the long hours you put in during this process. It's been I know it's been hard, I know there have been long hours, but there's members who are going on holiday this weekend and we had to clean this up, and the staff who obviously want to get away on holiday too. So just members, I really do appreciate you being a part of this process and your input. I particularly want to thank the Chief Executive and Dave and Sean and your teams. You put in huge hours. And I just really thank you for I know it's been massive. I know, like I've said before, I was getting emails at times well after midnight, like at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Just to add to that, my appreciation to staff, but also it's more than just the staff that are in this room. It's probably gone right down across all groups, right down to very deep levels of the organisation that have been touched by the 10-year plan. It has been a bit of a virus, and so there's a lot of people who have been working on it. So thank you for the appreciation, Mr Mayor, and Angela and Mark and the other councillors that passed it on. So thank you.
And thank you. Yeah, thank you from Democracy for what they've done.
Huge effort, thank you.
To governance, yeah. And I know that these figures have been huge and these have been big decisions, and I know for some of you it's a new process, and for those of you who this has been a new process for, I know it's been daunting, but these are the hard decisions that we're here for. Yes, Councillor Dave.
Just suggest that there might be one beer and one wine upstairs if anyone wants to go there, just to finish on a different.
Just one beer.
Yeah, one beer, and to share. And also,
Portfolio system.
could I ask through you if there was ever, if there was any single speech that the Deputy Mayor made where he didn't mention Tamaheri?
Good friends.
Right of
Thank you all.
And see you in the morning.